What happens when family loyalty collides with championship destiny? What goes through the mind of the enforcer when the tribal chief reclaims his throne? Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most emotionally charged moments in recent WWE history, because Jacob Fatu just broke his silence on Roman Reigns winning the Royal Rumble, and what he said is going to shake the entire wrestling world to its core. The Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas erupted like a volcano when Roman Reigns' music hit at number 30. 70,000 fans lost their minds. Some threw their drinks in the air. Others just stood there, mouths open, unable to process what they were witnessing. Because let's be real, nobody saw this coming. The tribal chief had been lurking in the shadows for months, strategically staying away from the spotlight, letting the chaos unfold without him. And then, like a hurricane making landfall, he returned at the perfect moment to punch his ticket to WrestleMania. But here's where it gets interesting. While the world was losing its collective mind over Roman's victory, there was one man whose reaction everyone wanted to see. Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf, the most devastating force in the new bloodline, the man who had been tearing through the entire roster like a wrecking ball, proving that he's not just Roman's muscle, he's a legitimate main event player in his own right. For months, Fatu had been the centerpiece of Solo Siko's vision for the bloodline. He'd been the one delivering those bone-crushing moonsaults. He'd been the one standing tall over fallen opponents. He'd been the enforcer, the destroyer, the future of the family. And suddenly, Roman Reigns walks back in, wins the Royal Rumble, and the entire landscape shifts beneath everyone's feet. Now, you might be thinking, why does Jacob Fatu's reaction matter so much? Well, let me paint you a picture. Imagine you've been the star quarterback leading your team to victory after victory. You've been putting in the work, earning the respect, building the legacy. And then the old quarterback, the legend who left, comes back and immediately gets handed the starting position for the championship game. That's the situation we're looking at here, except the stakes are infinitely higher because this is the bloodline, where family politics and professional ambition create a pressure cooker unlike anything else in sports entertainment. The interview happened backstage, just hours after the Royal Rumble ended. Fatu was still in his ring gear, sweat dripping down his face, that intense look in his eyes that's become his trademark. The interviewer approached cautiously. You could see the nervousness in their body language, because let's face it, Jacob Fatu is not the kind of person you want to catch on a bad day. The question came out carefully, almost tentatively. Jacob, your thoughts on Roman Reigns winning the Royal Rumble? The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Fatu's jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed. For a moment, you could see the wheels turning, the internal calculation happening in real time. And then he spoke, and his words carried the weight of thunder. You want to know what I think? Fatu's voice was controlled but intense, every word measured and deliberate. I think the tribal chief just reminded everyone why he's the greatest of all time. I think he just showed the entire world that the bloodline doesn't exist without him. I think Roman Reigns just did what Roman Reigns always does, he took what's his. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. There was respect there, absolutely. There was acknowledgement of Roman's greatness, no question. But underneath it all, there was something else. Something harder to define. A fire. An edge. A barely contained intensity that suggested this story is far from over. Fatu continued, and this is where things got really fascinating. People keep asking me how I feel about Roman being back. How I feel about him winning the Rumble. How I feel about him getting a title shot at WrestleMania. And you know what? I'm proud. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of what we represent. But let me make something crystal clear, I didn't come to WWE to stand in anyone's shadow. I came here to cement my own legacy. Those words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Because what Fatu was saying, without actually saying it, was that he's not content being just the muscle. He's not satisfied being just the enforcer. He wants his moment. He wants his WrestleMania. He wants his championship reign. And the fact that Roman just jumped the line, as legitimate as his victory was, has created a tension that you could cut with a knife. Think about the dynamics at play here. Roman Reigns spent years building the bloodline into the most dominant faction in WWE history. He brought in the Usos. He controlled G. He manipulated Jimmy. He used Solo. And now, after taking time away, he returns to find a new version of the bloodline that's been thriving without him. Solo Sikoa has been leading. Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa have been holding it down. And Jacob Fatu has been the breakout star, the revelation, the guy that fans and wrestlers alike have been calling the future. So when Roman wins the Royal Rumble, it's not just about him earning a title shot. It's about the old guard reclaiming territory that the new generation thought might finally be theirs. It's about legacy versus evolution. It's about respect versus ambition. The wrestling world immediately exploded with reactions. Social media went absolutely bonkers. Fans were debating in the comments, in the forums, everywhere you looked. Some people were saying Fatu should be happy for Roman, that family comes first, that the tribal chief's success is everyone's success. Others were arguing that Fatu has every right to feel some type of way, that he's been busting his tail for months and deserves his own spotlight. One fan wrote, "Jacob Fatu is being way too gracious. He should be demanding his own title shot." Another countered with, "This is the bloodline. You acknowledge the tribal chief or you're out." The debate raged on, but what was undeniable was that everyone was talking about it. Everyone was invested. Everyone wanted to see what happens next. Behind the scenes, according to sources close to the situation, the locker room was watching this development with intense interest. Other wrestlers were seeing an opportunity. If there's discord in the bloodline, if there's tension between Roman and Fatu, that creates openings. That creates vulnerabilities. That creates chances for people who've been waiting for the bloodline's armor to show even the smallest crack. Cody Rhodes, the current champion, reportedly watched Fatu's interview multiple times. He knows better than anyone that the bloodline is most dangerous when they're unified. But a bloodline with internal questions? With competing ambitions? That's a different scenario entirely. Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, all the top guys were paying attention because they understand that the landscape might be shifting. But here's what makes this situation so compelling. Fatu's not wrong. He's been absolutely incredible since arriving in WWE. That moonsault he hits at his size is physics-defying. The intensity he brings to every match is unmatched. He's beaten established stars. He's won big matches. He's proven that he belongs at the highest level. So when he says he didn't come to WWE to stand in anyone's shadow, he's not being disrespectful. He's being honest. He's being ambitious. And in professional wrestling, ambition is the fuel that drives the greatest stories ever told. Roman Reigns, for his part, hasn't directly addressed Fatu's comments yet, but those close to the tribal chief say he's aware. Of course he's aware. Roman Reigns is always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He didn't become the greatest of this generation by accident. He built his empire by understanding power dynamics, by knowing when to strike, when to manipulate, when to control. And you can bet he's already formulating his response, his strategy, his next move in this chess game. The question everyone's asking now is what happens when Roman and Fatu finally come face to face. Will Roman acknowledge Fatu's contributions and ambitions? Will he offer a partnership, a true equal footing in the bloodline? Or will he do what he's always done, remind everyone that there's only one tribal chief, only one head of the table, and everyone else exists to serve his vision? And what about Solo Sikoa, the self-appointed enforcer who's been running things in Roman's absence? He brought Fatu in. He built this version of the bloodline. How does he feel about Roman walking back in and potentially taking over? There are so many layers to this situation, so many potential flashpoints, so many ways this could explode into something massive. Imagine the scenarios. Picture WrestleMania approaching. Roman's in the main event challenging for the title. But what if Fatu decides he wants that spot? What if he goes to management and says he's earned his own opportunity? What if he challenges Roman, not out of disrespect, but out of competitive fire? What if the greatest story they could tell is Tribal Chief versus Samoan Werewolf, family versus family, legacy versus future? Or consider this, what if Roman brings Fatu into his confidence? What if he says, "I won the Rumble, I'm going to WrestleMania, but after I win the title, you're next. Help me now, and I'll elevate you later." That's the kind of political maneuvering Roman excels at. That's how he's maintained power for so long. But would Fatu accept that deal? Would he trust Roman's promise? Or has he seen too many people get burned by the tribal chief's manipulations? The beauty of Jacob Fatu's reaction is that it's layered with complexity. He's showing respect while asserting his own value. He's acknowledging Roman's greatness while making it clear he has his own ambitions. He's walking a tightrope between family loyalty and personal goals, and that's the kind of nuanced storytelling that makes professional wrestling at its highest level absolutely captivating. And let's talk about what this means for the championship picture. If Roman wins the title at WrestleMania, and that's a massive if because the champion won't go down easy, then what? Does Fatu become the #1 contender? Does he have to prove himself all over again? Does Solo factor into this equation? Do the Usos return and suddenly it's a four-way power struggle for control of the Bloodline? The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this moment so electric. We're watching the foundation being laid for potentially the biggest internal Bloodline story ever told. This could make the Roman vs. G saga look like a warm-up. This could become the defining narrative of the next year in WWE. What we witnessed with Fatu's reaction wasn't just a backstage interview. It was a declaration. It was a line being drawn. It was a statement that the new generation of the Bloodline isn't content to simply follow orders. They want their crowns too. They want their WrestleMania moments too. They want their legacies too. And Roman Reigns, the master manipulator, the tribal chief, the greatest champion of this era, now has to navigate waters that might be more treacherous than anything he's faced before. Because Jacob Fatu isn't GUSO. He's not someone Roman molded and controlled from the beginning. He's a fully formed superstar who came into WWE with his own reputation, his own skills, his own fanbase, and his own dreams. The Royal Rumble was just the beginning. Roman Reigns pointed at the WrestleMania sign and the world cheered. But in the shadows, Jacob Fatu watched with eyes full of fire and ambition. The Bloodline has always been about family, but it's also always been about power. And when multiple members of the family want that power, when multiple generational talents believe it's their time, that's when things get really interesting. So as we move forward toward WrestleMania, as Roman prepares for his championship opportunity, as the Bloodline navigates these new dynamics, Jacob Fatu's words will echo in everyone's minds. I didn't come here to stand in anyone's shadow. Those 8 words might be the most important sentence spoken in WWE this year, because they signal that change is coming, that the old order might be challenged, that the future is demanding its moment right now. The story of the Bloodline continues to evolve, to surprise us, to give us moments we never saw coming. And Jacob Fatu's reaction to Roman Reigns winning the Royal Rumble is the latest chapter in what might become the greatest saga in modern wrestling history. Family, loyalty, ambition, legacy, all colliding in the most spectacular way possible. This is what we live for as wrestling fans. This is the drama, the stakes, the emotion that makes this business unforgettable. We'll be watching every single step of this journey, and something tells me we haven't seen anything yet. The best is still to come, and when it does, the entire wrestling world will be forced to acknowledge what's happening in the Bloodline. What did you think of Jacob Fatu's reaction? Do you think he should get his own WrestleMania moment? Could we see Fatu versus Roman down the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is just getting started. And if you want to stay updated on every twist and turn of this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single moment of what's about to unfold. This is wrestling at its finest, and we're all here to witness history being made.